Greetings everyone, Sizzle466 here, and in today's video we're going to look at the creation of an aggregated wild meta report for Hearthstone. Now, we're using data from Tempo Storm, Vicious Syndicate, Hearthstone Top Decks, and Rankstar reports. Now, as we can see, Odd Paladin is the #1 deck in all 4 of these reports, but we see discrepancies once we hit the #2 deck. Now, keep in mind that with the Tempo Storm, Hearthstone Top Decks, and Rankstar reports, these are all expert opinion-driven reports. Yes, some data is used, but it is the expert's opinion of how these tier lists are created. With the Vicious Syndicate reports, it is purely data-driven, and while data-driven reports are very powerful, one thing to be cautious of in Wild is because of the small sample size of the format, there are cases where pilots of decks that are very specialized at can skew the data. And that's one of the reasons we're seeing Odd Rogue appear as the #2 deck, because there are a couple of players who are very good at Odd Rogue and they share the data with Vicious Syndicate, and hence kind of skewing their tier list to a certain extent. Now, fortunately, with this aggregated meta report, it's going to remove a lot of these bad data and kind of skewed data to give us a better overall picture of what does the wild meta look like. So one thing we do is we look through all of the different decks, and we do notice that Top Decks and Rankstar have a lot of tier 3 and 4 decks. And one of the reasons they have these here is because they don't provide write-ups for every single deck in their tier lists, and also they're using decks that are specialist decks. So these are decks that might be really good by like 1 or 2 players, but in general don't really see play on the wild ladder at top ranks. So the Tempo Storm VS decks, these are decks that people are having success with. But a lot of the other decks, yes, they see play, but they're typically not mentioned in the more data-driven decks. So because of that, I have removed decks that are only mentioned in 3 of the 4 meta reports. So because of that, we clean things up to get the following. And as you can see, we've removed a lot of the meme decks, the decks that really don't see play in reality. And then after we remove, just kind of clean things up, we have a more sensible looking bunch of tier lists. So now we've got our tier 1s, our tier 2, our tier 3, our tier 4. And now it's kind of even, now that we remove those decks that don't really see play. Now, the next thing we want to do is add in the tier scores. So the tier scores are going to be based on how many decks are in a specific tier, and what is the position in that tier. So once we add in those scores, we get the following. So as we can see, again, all 4 reports claim that Odd Paladin is the best deck in the format, so they all get a 1. 1's the best score. And then for tier 1s, we get our scores between 1 and 2. For tier 2, we get our scores between 2 and 3, and so on for tier 3 and tier 4. Now, this is the point where we start to combine the lists to get our aggregated snapshot. And this is where any like major discrepancies between the reports can be averaged out. For example, we can see in Tempo Storm, Tempo Storm has Murloc Shaman as the 3rd best deck. Vicious Syndicate has Murloc Shaman as the 6th best deck, whereas Hearthstone Top Decks has it in tier 3. So these averages get sorted out with these aggregated effects. And so when we combine the tier lists, we get the following. So what's being done here is we combine them all into one tier list. So we have all of the tier 1 decks. Again, decks like Odd Paladin, they're repeated multiple times because they're in multiple reports. Just to have a look at all of the tier scores for every single deck that is mentioned 3 times amongst the 4 reports. Now, the next step that we do is we now want to sort the list based on just alphabetic order. And now this lets us, Aggro Druid's mentioned 4 times over the 4 reports. Big Priest is mentioned 4 times over the 4 reports. Q-Block's mentioned 3 times. So just to get us an idea of how each archetype is rated amongst these 4 reports we're looking at. And now the fun part is we calculate their tier list score. And we do that by averaging the score based on the number of reports it's mentioned in. So Aggro Druid, sum those up, divide by 4. Big Priest, sum them up, divide by 4. Q-Block, sum them up, divide by 3. And we get the following calculated tier list. So now we have every single archetype calculated by the tier score based on how it was rated in the 4 reports. Or 3, it may be mentioned in 3 or maybe mentioned in 4. And now for the final results, and this is the really interesting part, how does Wild look based on all these different meta reports that are out there? And we have the following. This is our aggregated meta snapshot. So as we can see, tier 1, Odd Paladin, Kingsbane Rogue, Even Warlock. Even Warlock is an interesting one because 2 of the reports had it at tier 1, the other 2 had it at tier 2. So we can see that there's quite a jump in power between Kingsbane Rogue and Even Warlock, but Even Warlock does clock in a place in tier 1. And this is what makes me really happy. Like, look at all these tier 2 decks. Like, this is what, in my opinion, makes Wild really fun right now. There is a big variety in decks that you can play. Yes, they have, some of them have very polarized matchups. Looking at decks like Big Priest, looking at decks like Mech Hunter, there are cases where you basically like auto win based on your opponent or auto lose based on your opponent. But just the variety is really amazing. We can see that there isn't much experimentation right now in Wild. We don't have that many tier 3 and tier 4 decks. But keep in mind that there are some nerfs coming in for Kingsbane Rogue, which is going to drastically throw things out of alignment, which I'm very excited about. So, this is our meta snapshot as of the 21st of May. The nerfs are hitting very soon. We'll see how things go. I'd love to hear what you think about this snapshot. What are your opinions with the Wild meta? How's your experience? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to support the channel, you can click that subscribe button, click the notification bell to get alerted when new videos are live. And until next time, I hope to see you again.